Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Councillor James Husband, Chairman of the Committee, and to my right are my colleagues, fellow councillors, and we will be the people making the decisions on the matters in front of us this evening. If, first of all, I can ask, are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies for absence this evening from Councillor Zvodenjuk and
Yes.
apologies for lateness from Councillor Toby Benton, who I believe will be joining us very shortly.
Yes, thank you. Just to explain, if there are people watching online, if Councillor Benton arrives before we actually start the presentation for the case in front of us, then he can join the committee. If we have already got underway, then I'm afraid he'll have to sit it out and he won't be able to take part because there's, as you can imagine, there's a strict rule that to make a decision on an application, a councillor has to have been present throughout the consideration of that application. So if we move on now to declarations, are there any declarations of interest, colleagues? Are there any other declarations? I have one in that I am actually a trustee of the Cyril Taylor Foundation. The Cyril Taylor Foundation is actually was the owner via a company called AIFS. Now, AIFS actually owned Atlantic House, but they sold it, and they sold it outright. I should emphasize, I took no part in the sale by AIFS to Thomas's School, and on that basis I feel quite satisfied that I can consider matters in front of us this evening. I don't think I have any sort of conflict. Okay, so Toby, thank you very much for joining us. So you've joined us just in time. Now, before we move on to the application in front of us, we have minutes of the meeting that was held on the 29th of February. Can I sign those as a record? Thank you. Thank you very much. Good. So in that case, we move to this evening's principal item to consider further application at Atlantic House. And I think Julia Javetska, Julia, you're going to introduce this, aren't you? So please, Julia, when you're ready, go ahead.
Chairman, before we do that, can you just check that Councillor Benton doesn't have any declarations of interest or other declarations of interest?
Oh, yes. Toby, do you have any declarations or other declarations to make?
No declarations whatsoever.
No, there are none. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for reminding me.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. There has only been one change to a date. In just a bit of a background information, planning permission was granted last year for the change of use of Atlantic House, which is outlined in red on this map, to create a new school with external and internal changes. Thomas's School currently operates at 21 St Albans Grove. Hopefully you can see my cursor, it's just over here. 17 and 19 Cottesmore Gardens over here, and 3941 Victoria Road. The permission was granted to consolidate the school facility at Atlantic House site from both the Cottesmore Gardens and Victoria Road sites. 4 planning applications were granted, 1 for Atlantic House to create a new school with an external playground, 2 for Cottesmore Gardens to create either 5 flats or 2 houses, and 1 for 3941 Victoria Road to create 8 flats. The application that is in front of members tonight seeks permission for material amendments to planning permission under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act. The extant planning permission granted last year continues to carry significant weight in the determination of this application. This slide shows some visuals of the previously granted scheme. The top left corner is the previously granted front elevation, the bottom left corner is the rear elevation, and the visual on the right-hand side is again the front elevation. On the right-hand side, members can see a glazed link between 2 buildings. During the planning committee meeting last year, there was a long discussion regarding the design of this element, and members requested that this extension should be more solid. I just want to ensure members that this extension will be amended to create a more solid extension as per the discussion. However, this will be dealt with under condition 3A and 3E, which the applicant will need to discharge showing the amended design. The details required by those conditions will need to come back to the planning committee for members' consideration and decision. Where changes are proposed to a development following the grant of planning permission, an applicant is able to make a material amendment by applying to vary or remove conditions attached to a planning permission, including the approved plans condition. I will now run through some slides showing some of the external changes. This slide shows the approved front elevation on the top and the proposed front elevation at the bottom. Members can see some changes to the windows over here, the proposed man-safe system on the roof, the lift overrun over here. This slide shows the approved rear elevation on the top and the proposed rear elevation on the bottom. Again, members can see some changes to the windows at the rear, the alterations to the roof light, fire escape enclosure, and the stairs on this side. This slide shows the approved side elevation on the left and then the proposed elevation on the right-hand side. Again, some changes to the windows, lift overrun, PV panels on the roof. This slide shows visuals of the, slide shows again side elevation showing the approved elevation on the left-hand side and the proposed elevation on the right-hand side. Again, showing some changes to the windows, stairs, louvers within the roof. This visual shows the approved scheme on the top and the proposed on the bottom. And again, another visual of the approved scheme at the top and the proposed scheme at the bottom. The previously approved scheme was granted subject to various conditions and a legal agreement. All conditions, as previously attached, have been reconsidered and applied afresh. The applicant will also need to enter a legal agreement. The principle has been established and members don't need to revisit this element. Only need to focus on the amendments highlighted within the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, colleagues, there are no speakers this evening, so it's over to us for questions. I think before we start, it's just really important to clarify some quite important things that were discussed at the committee when the original permission was granted. For example, a school travel plan, details, other important details. For example, as Julia mentioned about how the central kind of link block, which in the moment has a great deal of glazing in it, and I think there was a general feeling that something more solid, low key but solid, was what was necessary in that location. But these are not part of what's in front of us this evening, so we need to bear that in mind. Any questions about what we've what's been presented. Anyone like to ask a question?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I wanted to ask about the last change on the list, which is the modification to the approved extent of demolition and the replacement of the wall. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? I just know that residents are very sensitive about noise, changes, and that felt quite a sort of significant change.
Yes, absolutely. I might bring up the elevation, might be helpful to just outline what the additional demolition is being proposed. Just 1 second. So hopefully you can see on this slide, this outlined, you can see my cursor. This is the additional scope of demolition that is being proposed. Everything else will stay within the Atlantic House building. This is the additional, the west and the rear elevation as well. As part of the previous permission, there's quite a lot of demolitions been already approved. The applicants carry out quite a lot of structural works to the buildings, both buildings, and they found out they actually part of this building here, which is the positive building within the conservation area, quite a lot of it actually can be retained. So as part of this application, they are proposing to retain more of this building, which is the positive building within the conservation area. However, within the building of Atlantic House, it was found that actually the part of the rear elevation and the part of the side elevation would have to be demolished. But in terms of the construction and travel implication of those demolitions, there would be an additional impact above and beyond the previously granted scheme.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I've just... Arian, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Julia, for the presentation. In terms of linking that building, is there any additional massing or in terms of the height? And if there is an increase, why was the proposal, resubmitted, in terms of variation?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Sorry, I'm just bringing the slides again. Just to point out some of the changes in terms of the design. So in terms of the overall height of the building, there are no changes being proposed as part of this application. The changes to the roof includes a man-safe system, which is usually a railing around the roof for the maintenance purposes, and PV panels, so in terms of the height, that would be the same. The change in terms of the massing is being proposed within this fire enclosure. As you can see on this slide, there's just this additional small additional massing, which hopefully you can see me outlining just over here. And then on top is the previously approved scheme. So in terms of the overall massing of the buildings, it would just be a small additional.
Is there a reason why they've done it after?
Yeah, so that came out with further works the applicant have done in terms of the internal layout. They had to increase the space over here. But for example, you can see some of the other elements been removed. For example, the roof light, which previously was much larger, now is being removed just to have a simple roof light. So it's just been more work done in terms of the internal layout.
Very good. Any other points? Or maybe we can move to make a decision. Yeah. Yeah.
I've just got one more question. I did have a look at, I know the original scheme was quite controversial and lots of people objected and some of the neighbours are concerned and worried for a number of reasons. Did anybody actually object to specifically any of the changes that are proposed in this application? I know there have been some objections, but specifically on what's been asked for here.
Thank you. As members can see from the objections received, there are generally, because of the principle of the school being in that location and some changes that being proposed, but the objections itself actually didn't bring any more material consideration for the officers. Really the concerns are in terms of the noise management from the playground, which that was previously granted, and the transport implications on the neighbouring properties. However, the conditions from the original permission are proposed to be carried over to this permission, and there are various conditions, as Councillor Husband mentioned, that they have to go back to committee. For example, the management plan of the playground and the travel plan and traffic management plan, and the link extension as well.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, this is I'm going to just ask you to clarify that for me again. In terms of the management of play times when the playground is going to be in use, and how the residents are going to, for example, the RA are going to have any sort of sign off on that or anything.
Thank you. So we are recommending various conditions to restrict the use of the playground. For example, we're restricting the hours and the days. For example, condition 26, restrict the use of the playground only between 8 and 3, Monday to Friday, and not at all on Saturdays, Sundays and bank holidays. There's also conditions for no music to be audible outside. In terms of condition 29, that requires a noise management plan. And that condition actually has to be formed through a prior engagement with the residents before the applicant submits anything to the council for consideration. Also, condition 30, restrict the use of the site only to a school. I think, and also condition 35, which restricts number of pupils enrolling to a school.
Thank you very much. This is, I doubt this isn't really going to move the needle for me, I think, but I'm just wondering, because I'm always unsure about the language of conditions like this, where it's sort of through prior engagement with the local community. You know, I mean, that's not particularly that's not I doubt it would come to that, but that's not a particularly sort of substantive. There are a huge amount of consequences if they don't speak to the local community. I'm just wondering what that looks like on the ground.
I can't really say at the moment, just because we don't have those, the applicant hasn't submitted those conditions to us. But right. What we would expect from the applicant would be engagement with the resident association, and also engagement with the neighbouring properties adjacent to the site. And as part of the application, the applicant will have to provide a community engagement to specify what engagement they've done.
Okay, thank you.
I think part of the thinking of the original committee was that by asking that these conditions come back to committee, it obliges the applicant to have some engagement with local residents. And I think, but I think as has been emphasised, that this is not really part of what is in front of us this evening, but it's very much relevant for the scheme to actually proceed. But this is a much narrower set of details in front of us this evening, if that makes sense. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Harry, do you want to? Yeah.
In terms of the recommended points, just want a little clarification on point number 2.
Sorry, just in terms of the table on this
Yes.
paragraph 1.4. Yes. So the recommendation is for committee to either agree with the reasons for approval as set out in the report, and then delegate the authority to the Director of Planning to complete the legal agreement in Section 106, or if applicant will refuse to do that, the recommendation will be to refuse planning permission because of that lack of the legal agreement. The only change between the date you members got within the pack and within the addendum, we just extended it until the 31st of May to ensure if members are minded to approve it to give us more time to work on the legal agreement.
So if they couldn't submit on time, refusal as in what, to the conditions or to the actual full planning?
No, so as part of our work after the resolution of tonight, we will have to work on the legal agreement. So the applicant might refuse to enter into the legal agreement. So that recommendation gives us a reason to refuse it if they wish not to enter.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? No. Okay. In that case, I think we can make a decision. So the recommendation is to agree the recommendations in section 1.4 of the report. And as we've just discussed in the addendum, we note that the date for the completion of the legal agreement is being amended to the 31st of May. So on that basis, can I see those in favour, please, of the recommendations? So that is agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our business. Very good evening. Thank you.